Good evening, sociology students. This is chapter 7, talking about groups and organizations. Very short chapter, but it's got some pretty, interesting things in it. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Chapter 7 deals with the power of society to link people into groups. Remember, we've talked a lot in these last 2 chapters about socializing. And this chapter talks about these people and how we socialize in different groups in our lives. A social group is 2 or more people who identify with and interact with one another. For example, families, churches, and neighborhoods. These individuals share experiences, loyalties, and interests. Not every collection of individuals forms a group. For example, women have a status in common, remember from chapter 6, talking about your status set, but are comprised of different things like religion, sexual orientation, etc. So just because you have a group of women doesn't necessarily mean that they are a social group. They just happen to have a status in common. The same thing with men. All men are not in a social group. You have the commonality of being a man. This is called a category holding the same status but strangers. Social groups are of 2 types. You have the primary group with strong emotional ties, and then you have your secondary group with weak emotional ties. Primary groups are a small social group whose members share personal and lasting relationships, like your family. In society, family is the most important primary group. Very strong emotional ties there. Then you have your secondary groups, which are large and impersonal social groups whose members pursue a specific goal or activity. Most secondary groups exist for a short amount of time, and a great example I always ask in class if we were face-to-face, is our class a primary group or secondary group? And while some students would like to raise their hand and say that we are a primary group because we're small, we share some personal relationships because we're in that classroom together, we actually are not. We are a secondary group, even though we are not considered large, and we're a secondary group because we're pursuing a specific goal or activity. The goal is for you to be successful in this class, and my goal is to help you be successful. So as you see down there, students enrolled in a course at a large university or a small community college would be an example of a secondary group. An important element of group dynamics is leadership. Groups generally benefit from 2 kinds of leadership. There's the instrumental, which is leadership that focuses on the completion of tasks. And then there's the expressive leadership that focuses on the group's well-being. Okay? When you're in a group, you generally do have a leader. And instrumental leaders concentrate on the bottom line. How do we get this stuff done? What are we getting done? Okay? Expressive leaders focus on building relationships. They're not necessarily concerned with the bottom line as much as they're concerned with the well-being of the people in the group with them. If you work, or if you're in a specific group, whether it be a family, a church, what type of boss or leader do you think that you have? I would say that my family, I'm considered the leader of my family. And if I had to ask them, they would probably say that I am an instrumental leader because I'm all about the bottom line and how can we get tasks completed. So I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but think about in your personal life, what type of bosses or leaders do you have? I think the goal would be to kind of be a mixture of both, don't you think? Okay, so moving on. There's a couple of things about the decision-making styles of leaders, and I'll let you read through those yourself. Basically, you have one being very, very strict on making decisions to no strict at all. Nothing, just kind of anything goes, okay? Size. Now, size plays an important part in how group members interact. Typically, the bigger the group, the more interactions and conversations. My favorite theorist, George Simmel, created the term dyad as an example of the dynamics in a group. A dyad is a group with two members. This group is usually more intense because neither shares information or attention with anyone else. Example, think of your very best friend, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, somebody where it's just the two of you all and you have a very close and personal relationship. Now, I have here that dyads are very unstable. And I asked, why do you think that is? I would ask in class. I'll give you the answer. Dyads tend to be very unstable because it's just two people. And if one person leaves the group, then what happens to the social and emotional well-being of the other person? They have nobody to bounce anything off of, okay? Then there's also the triad, not to be confused with the Chinese triad, no swords here and stuff. A social group with three members. These relationships tend to be more stable. And obviously the answer for that, or the rationale for that, would be that if one person leaves the group for whatever reason, then the person that is left has somebody else that they can bounce ideas off of and can share things with. Consequently, as groups grow bigger, they grow stronger in sustainability, able to lose members without completely dissolving, but they also grow weaker in personalities. And I want you to think about why that is, okay? Matter of fact, if you can answer and tell me why you think that bigger groups lose members, they grow weaker in personalities, send me the answer to that for some extra points going into quiz 2, okay? Then we have some formal organizations here. We're talking a little bit about secondary groups. They are large secondary groups organized to achieve its goals efficiently, like businesses, corporations. There are 3 types: utilitarian, normative, and coercive. And I'll let you read through those to give you a great example of the different types of organizations that are comprised of secondary groups. Okay? That is the end of that. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.